Sorry, there was some noise. We muted all microphones. So how the world would be after all what's happening in the world? For this, we want you to understand after the speech that we're going to have the causes of metamorphosis of geopolitics and geoeconomics that lead to a world order. Things are changing. There are some changes that we don't even realize are taking place. It's not only China and the United States. There's a lot behind. Our next speaker is quite experienced. He presents every single day in Mexico, Latin America, and we admire him. He's going to give a good vision on how things are in the world. So I'm going to ask Judith to introduce this great speaker. Go ahead, please. Thank you, Mauricio, very much. It is my pleasure to speak about the experience of Dr. José Ignacio Martínez Cortés, PhD in Economy in the Complutense University Madrid after his master's degree in international trade and also a bachelor degree in economy and international affairs, a specialty in economic integration in Colegio de México. Currently, he's professor, researcher at UNAM, belonging to the International Affairs Center, combining international economy. He's also an anchor, a presenter in CNN, AFP, El País, Universal newspapers, among others. He also has some books. Among the recent in 2020, we have Praxis of International Businesses, Mexico. Also in 2019, Latin America and the Caribbean region, and China, Political and International Relationship, Mexico NAM. Currently, his current research project is the Agenda Mexico 2030, Prospects, Actors and Factors in the New International Dynamics, among many other projects where he has participated. It is my pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Ignacio Martínez Cortés. He's going to present geoeconomics and politic change before this incipient world order. It is an honor to have this invitation in this new modality, which is very important. And as it was mentioned early today, this important anniversary of the firm has to be celebrated. As it was mentioned today, this is the result of great leadership, the vision of the founders by Mauricio Mubarak. Congratulations for these 25 years, and as you said, we will be healthy to celebrate 25 additional years. So I send a hug from my heart. We will soon be together to celebrate in person in the next Congress. Thank you very much. Thanks to you, Mauricio. You know that I appreciate your leadership. I see some familiar faces where we met at the Congress a year ago in this wonderful El Diplomático Hotel. Let's analyze this presentation. Something that Dr. Connolly and Dr. Vega Canovas mentioned. I am following their comments. They set the bar very high, however. So I'm just going to take these topics and talk about what they mentioned about the participation of China in the international landscape. The conflict between China and the United States. This conflict breaks and something happened. Before starting, I would like to mention some dates in order to explain myself on why in a sudden manner the economy dropped and it was not foreseen. Am I sharing my presentation? You are already as a presenter? Okay. Can I get some help? My apologies. We rehearsed, but can you hear me, Ignacio? Yes. Thank you. Underneath the screen, please click there. You have an icon and put share screen. So we are going to analyze geopolitical metamorphosis and geoeconomics before world order. So we're seeing the part of the new economy, how this context will lead us. I am not calling it the new normality or modality, but a new reality. So, analyzing the new global agenda in economy, as Dr. Connolly and Dr. Beriacanovas explained in a brilliant manner, I just give this context where we were around the conflict that rose in April 2018. It is important to underline that the legal framework of the United States allows the president, by means of the trade representative, to establish a series of measures in the commercial policy of the United States. It is a shame that Dr. Vega Canovas didn't participate, because I should say I used to read all his articles. We need to explain this in this way, and I expressed that he's one of the main stakeholders that we need to take into consideration in order to know the legal framework of the White House and the Senate. United States, we need to remember that they have constitutionary law, while most countries use Roman law. This constitutionary law is built day after day. There's a law from the 1933, which is the trade base of the United States. Then we have some amendments. The Act of the 47 is the trade law. Then 62, which is also the security law. The 64 law, and probably the best known, Act 74, Section 301 and 301 2. We need to consider this for the business audits. Anti-dumping laws. We need to pay attention of the legal framework of the United States. The Trade Office of the White House Trade Representative presents every March the 1st a very important document with two sections. One is the report of the trade policy of the United States from last year, and another document is called the Trade Agenda of the United States. It is important to point out that this document is presented to the Senate Commission. This commission, in turn, the Trade Commission, submits it to the Arbitrage and Media Council. So this policy, which is going to be adopted with the intervention of the Trade Committee in the Senate, we can say that the Senate authorizes the White House, the Trade Office, so they follow the path which is established both in the report and trade agenda. It is important to point out this fact because on July the 1st, 2017, we started to see what was the trade policy in the United States for next year. And there we can see their policy towards China. So this is not a spontaneous conflict between the United States and China. It's a whole report. That's why it is so important. And those dates that have been pointed out are so important. On March the 1st, we see the guidance for trade in the United States. In a constant manner, it is important to visit the website. They establish procedures, research, how is compliance of goals in that document. In this point, we can see how the trade policy of United States is advancing in regard to China. 2018, 2019, they are stagnated in the conflict with China. As a result, in 2019, there's a series of sources analyzing the impact of this trade relationship between the United States and China to the global community. First, protectionism established by United States to China. Not only China, initially 35 nations, something very important included in this report. So it is not much, but they established tariffs. The way the trade office is constituted is that they inform countries that are going to be penalized to hold conversations to reach an agreement. This was the case in 2019 by several countries. In other countries, they were sanctioning Canada, for example. So the establishment of these tariffs is analyzed in different ways. The IMF says that this conflict has generated the world economy and global growth stagnation or rewind of 0.6 of global GDP. In the same way, this conflict caused the increase of costs in the sense that we need to consider that United States sanctioned steel and aluminum in the United States and also washing machines in China. As I said, steel, aluminum, and washing machines. Something very important that we need to stress out. United States imposed tariffs to manufacturing products, not to aggregated technological value or VAT, technological value added, because United States could be affecting its technological heart. All vendors come from China mainly. So we need to see how this conflict was caused. This caused a drop of 0.06 inflation. Global inflation could be facing this percentage points. England's bank points out that these tariffs would be affecting industrial production of United States in 2.5%, so world production would be affected in 1.1%. The Bank of France makes this analysis, making this 10% affecting transaction of trade partners of the United States. This is the context that we had. Something important to mention in this context is a series of dates to understand how we came to what we are going to see some months after this. This is the forecast. The forecast of January 15th, January 17th, 2020. That is 10 months ago. It is important to point out this date. Dr. Vega Cánovas already mentioned this model. The agreement between the United States and China, it is implicit. If it is commercial, economic, it was named. Agreement between China and the United States that was signed by Robin Alexander from the United States and the negotiating Liu Jie from China. This document was signed on January 15th in the White House in the Oval Office. As a witness, Donald Trump signed. All these data were introduced on January 17th. It is important to point out that on January 17th, Donald Trump also announced the free trade agreement between United States, Mexico, and Canada. An important obstacle had been overcome, and it was signed in Mexico in 2019, December the 10th. Mexico accepts addendum on Chapter 31.1, referring to the labor section related to Article 23.3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 that is centered to the labor part. These two events frame the ending of that confrontation for the trade conflict. We had a escape valve in this phase.
So between the U.S. and China, so we find the fall in 2019 with respect to 2020, and those percentual points that explain that are explained by these sources, 0.5, 0.7, this is on the 17th of January of 2020, are evident. So we have this drop in 2017, 2018, with a drop, an important drop, but 2019, it is like a specific drop. What was signed on the 15th of January made us see a new perspective. We were very happy. There was like we were like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but it didn't. And besides the January 15, we need to consider other dates, and you will tell me in your specific countries how you were with respect to those dates. On the 12th of December 2019, there were detected outbreaks of atypical fevers in Wuhan. From the 22nd to the 26th of December, the patients started to be admitted at the Wuhan hospitals. It was like with symptoms, like symptoms of influenza, of the flu, that were 100% atypical. And the closest part was, or the closest experience was the SARS-CoV in 2003, the closest to the symptoms. Well, was the symptoms that caused the flu. But it had like several behaviors in the sick patients, and there was a warning launched by an ophthalmologist to his friends, and then it went viral. And so this is how the alert was spread. And it's important to highlight for this timeline the attack made in Washington against China is that on the 31st of December, the Chinese government announced, it had a preliminary notice, but informed the WHO that there was an atypical disease. And as of the 1st of January of this year, the WHO followed up and informed on a daily basis of what has been going in Wuhan. It is important to highlight that the importance of Wuhan worldwide. And here, dear colleagues, we need to make a call to the embassies of your own countries. I have done this with the Secretary of the Economy. I am the Secretary of Health. That is kind of unusual. I am sorry to say this. The Secretary of the Economy was born in Mexico. She's an expert in foreign trade, as the Undersecretary of Commerce. They are both experts in foreign trade, especially the Secretary of the Economy. She has wide knowledge of the global value chains. The Secretary Luz María de la Mora, before being a government official, in 2004 and 2007, she was working for the Secretary of the Economy in Mexico. The Dr. Del Mora, before being an official again, she was researching on China, but she was an analyst. These two officials, they are excellent academics. They know about the global value chains. And it is important to highlight because of the position that Wuhan has worldwide. So we need to see the secretaries of your countries, because we have to have like accounting of the damages. In Mexico, they started on the 31st. Well, it hasn't been done, but we need to take into account the 31st of December and 23rd of January. Why? We know that the official spy of a country in another country is ambassador or the Miss Ambassador to that country in the country. So my question is, if this report was launched on the 31st of December, where's the note of the embassy of the embassy of Mexico and the embassy of the United States concerning Wuhan? All the communications as of the 10th to the 22nd of December. How is the evolution? Why I ask you to pay attention to the 23rd of January. The central government in China of the President Xi made a decision to have Wuhan locked down. And we all know the story because we watched it on the TV, but all the inhabitants of Wuhan wearing like outside and back and forth. We don't know if this was true or not, but for these purposes, it is important to take into consideration the 23rd of January. Why? Wuhan and I, so we need to, what the embassies of the different countries to China were doing. Wuhan represents 17 global value chains. If this is not magnified, Wuhan represents for the GDP of China 5.7%. And you see in the slide how China dropped. Wuhan accounts for the GDP 1.3 worldwide. If a city so important for the global economy and is relevant, well, at least I just want to translate this to Mexico. If we have a specialist in global value chain, and also we have a undersecretary that is an expert in China, why an alert was not launched? The first report was released on the 31st of December from China to the WHO Health Organization. And the other one is that, like Trump said, that he didn't receive anything. So we need on the 4th to know what happened on the 4th of January, what is going on in China. So we said, let's lock down Wuhan. What are we going to have? So the impact on how Wuhan affects the international production and the procurement of Wuhan to other countries. So you can take a look at it. So I just want to say this. Mauricio, the exchange of bulletins, the Laboratory of Analysis of Trade in Durham on the 4th of January, we launched 6 bulletins. On the 4th of January, we say what I've just mentioned, the importance of Wuhan. There's lockdown of Wuhan, the time zone, Wuhan, Mexico, between Wuhan and Mexico is 3 hours after. And if we see this time zone on the 23rd of January, we released a bulletin of the impact, international impact on Wuhan. And since I am a critic, but on the 28th, we released another analysis just for Mexico. And we give it by hand to the authorities of the country. Paradoxically, the one that paid more attention was the Secretary of Economy of Mexico. So I will put on the table other facts, and you will see, you will tell me how those measures were adopted in your own country. That's why the impact was tremendous. And the main part affected was by the new pathogen. Next, the impact on the health of the economy. This is how the bulletin of the 23rd of January was entitled. So I don't mind to say this was a public event. On the 16th of January, I received the ideologists of the Communist Party. And since it was a public forum, I asked this question: what was going on in China with respect to the pandemic? But it is documented. So on the 23rd of January, and then I need to analyze country by country. You will remember what happened in Japan, then the Italian cruise. February was a month of terrible stories. Then the pathogen arrived in Europe, Italy, Greece, and then it went terrible in Spain. When everybody was locked down in Spain, it was announced that next Monday you will be all locked down. So let's go party. And that's why everybody got infected. And this is what it happened in all the countries. In the 12th of March, the WHO reported the pandemic. And this is what each country did. In Mexico, our experts in labor law will tell me in the official Gazette of Mexico, it was published the measure to be adopted. And then we need to take into account several dates. I don't want to talk about Mexico specifically, but this is what happened on the 15th, on the 23rd of January, regarding to what we see in those statistics. The 15th of January and the 16th of January, to what we have here, and 17th of January this was released. So great news. I'm not the one to tell this, but the impact, the medical and sanitary impact of COVID, if you see what we did in January, and you can see this in the lab page. Yes. So this hecatomb happened, and this is the first sign. Yeah. On the 15th of June. See, these are 2 or 3 countries, the world GDP. What happened on the 17th of June, but for the by July 15, see how the economy was. The U.S., that they went from a happy 2.1 to minus 8.0 for the U.S. I urge you to see the main economies of the G20, France, Spain minus 12.8, Japan minus 5.8, the UK minus 10.2, Canada minus 8.4, emerging economies, China from 6.1 to 1.0. In Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, minus 9.1 from Brazil, minus 10.5 for Mexico. This is 2020. The forecast here is that in 2021 we will do really okay, and we can say that we will overcome the situation. Well, I suggest you to analyze how the economy is with respect to what we have. What causes the new coronavirus, what the virus is causing in the world economy, leaving aside the criticism if measures were taken or not. So we have that the world economy in 2020, it will have a behavior that was not seen since World War II. 1932, this is our reference year, 3 years after the 29 crisis for Mexico. we didn't have a year like the year 2020. The closest one was in 1932 with a drop of the GDP in 14.1%. And now we're forecasting a GDP of minus 10.5. So this per capita income rate will increase inequality. We hope that it will be a drop of 90%. The world GDP would have a reduction of 5.2%. The severe effect for the developed economies of 7.0 and for emerging economies of 1.6%. So this is as of the 8th of April, where Wuhan opened, and then this was a cascade at the end of April. Certain European countries in May, the world economy started released the lockdown. So we need to analyze if there's a second wave in October. In Mexico, we haven't even overcome the first wave, and this is the gradual behavior of restrictions. And again, I'm talking about the impact of Wuhan in the world economy. China released the Wuhan from lockdown the 8th of April. 1 week later, the car industry of Japan, Korea, and Germany, which are global value chains, they started on the plant. And it is important to highlight those dates because on the 17th of April, Wuhan was unlocked, and Donald Trump on the 17th of April gave a very important speech. And 2 points were directed on the consumption in the U.S., and 3 and 4 items were aimed at Mexico and the car industry. It says that it is very important that the car industry of North America be open evenly. So in Mexico, we started to see some adjustments. This occurred on the 17th of April. Then there were meetings back and forth. And then remember that in Mexico, it was going to boost the opening of the car industry in the country. So what was published in the U.S. and the official legal agency, and on that day, the new rules of origin of the USMC. On the 24th of April, the commercial representative informed the Senate that Mexico and Canada complied with the protocols to implement the new treaty based on Article 34.7, so that the Mexico, U.S. and Canada agreement would be in force since July. In politics, nothing is done by coincidence, but when Wuhan opened the car industry, so in cascade, Japan, Korea, Germany, and North America opened as a result. And for our colleagues of Brazil, we need to analyze the agreement that Mexico and Brazil had in the economic supplementary agreement that is aimed at the car industry. So if we see the effects in terms of measures towards, we are going to have around the forecast of the economy. So we are in the figures market. Who launches the most catastrophic or the number? What do we have in this sense about in the economy, in the world economy? In 2018 is a purple, dark purple. 2019 is light color, and 2020 is light purple. This is what I was referring to. How the main economies or the main regions of the world are regarding the drop of what is causing COVID-19. This is a drop. This is a sudden drop of the economy. So in 2020, it was forecast that the volume of the world trade of goods in terms of the firm, how, I don't know if you're in your firms, in this, that this morning told us about the presence of the firm around the world. So see how this has affected in terms of auditing, accounting analysis, or business. This dropped between 13 and 32%, and this is what is being forecast in terms of goods. What I was saying, the effect on the global value chains, and of course in the consumption and investment. So we have here implicit for all the countries how the world economy drop. This is for every country. Those are the four components of the GDP. Investment, spending, consumption, exports, less imports. So the countries that have like more market share or have more presence in globalization in terms of foreign trade, they are drastically affected.
So, around world trade, what are we going to have regarding merchandise and goods? We didn't have a so abrupt drop, something related to previous crisis. Differently from 2019 and also 2001, 1995, 1988, 87, and we can go beyond that. The crisis that we're experiencing is the result of production destruction, not capital destruction. It was simply because it was stopped due to the lack of consumption, not lack of investment. In some countries more, in some countries less. So that's why it is important to see how the economy was in January 2017 compared to what we have now. So, what's the behavior regarding product international prices? Our friends from South America can help us with this, ratifying this. Countries like China, United States, the EU member countries, all of us have suffered this crisis. Some prices were because there was no demand, some others because there was no production. So energetic or energy products have a strong drop regarding 2019. Minerals and metals 6.1, agricultural products a drop of 6%. It is important to point out that there's a popular saying in Mexico. It goes like this: when it is not raining, it is pouring. And there's another one saying that we were a lot and grandma had a baby. So we were already in the confinement in March and April. We were, after January 23rd, about 60 or 70 days. In Mexico, voluntary confinement started officially on April the 1st regarding the publication of non-essential activities stop was on April the 1st. So that's the saying: when it is not raining, it's pouring. And then we have the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Russia. There's a lot to do in the analysis part of this. And what we were not expecting, there was a terrible drop on energy prices. The first 2 weeks of April, the West Texas barrel or the Northern Sea barrel was worth nothing compared to what we had before. So there was a crisis for prices, but what happened came as if for nothing. There's no precedent here. Even if we had the gift of Cassandra to predict the future, and we are not sure if it was natural or created. So this is regarding products. And look here, same as this prospect, drop of world trade and behavior of regions by regions in world economy. Now, referring to impact in businesses. See, this is the behavior of products. Of course, this is going to change the world economy order. We need to analyze the participation of each country, how they are affected, The drop in energy prices, of course, is related to Saudi Arabia. And our friends from Bolivia and Chile can help us, and our friends from the southern hemisphere could help us to understand this better. The result of this drop, in turn, impacts a reduction in labor income. In households, we have redundancies or layoffs, and this will increase inequality and will broaden the gap. And the public health crisis, when people health is threatened, and then the economy, you can see the effect here. How Latin America is doing to this respect. And I'm going to share this information with you. Mexico has a drop in industrial production. At the midst of the free trade agreement, Mexico has a drop in industrial production. So it was industrial disinvestment. In Argentina, also a drop. Brazil 14.1, Chile 21, Colombia 21. Sorry, I was wrong. Industrial production in Mexico 29.3, Argentina 26.4, Brazil 15.1, 14.1 in Chile, 20.1 in Colombia, and 40.5 in Peru. Drastic drop. So all the commodities and raw material products dropped, but also industrial production. And I underline that we will have time to recover. And I continue mentioning this. All this is a burden in the global economy. So our expert, the Minister of Economy and Global Chains, and the Minister in China, which is the Commerce Undersecretary, all of them had this in mind. And we didn't prepare to this. It was a strong impact. I invite you to take into consideration the report, the China's report to the commerce OTC. But we can see that in households, a lot of people lost their jobs. They are suffering the effects because no measures were undertaken. Subsidies are a solution, but this was a strong attack, not only in the virus forecasting, but how Wuhan confined in January 23rd and in April 24th. So from January, when Wuhan was confined, and in April or on April 24, the expert in China, in the Mexican government, in an irresponsible manner, showed up. That's the size of the crisis in Mexico. Friends, the analysis is. And you can see the results. We will have to see how each country is experiencing this situation. So, look at the region. For 2020, the drop in GDP is 9.1. In South America, 9.4. Central America and Mexico, 7.9. The Caribbean, without Guyane, 5.4. So there's a serious drop. Which are the effects of COVID for Latin America? If it was not clearly explained before. Per capita GDP, drop of minus 9.9. That's the size of the drop. There is also a drop, and our closest experience to it was 2009 and 10, but that crisis was due to capital destruction, not here. Companies closed not because of production stoppage. Companies closed not because they didn't have an industrial production. It was because there was no consumption caused by lockdown, by COVID. So we can see this chart, how it depicts that this drop is the most dangerous at social level. For our friends of Latin America, remember that decade of the 80s, the lost decade, when we overcame social. And then we had inequality. When inequality was worsened, when poverty increased, democracy is affected at the same time. Which are these effects that we still have for Latin America? You can see the support to some countries regarding social security. And you would not let me lie. We find companies, for example, in Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, and Uruguay. We need to see if social security makes this country to have a lower number in inequality. We will see if effects were bumpered. Some countries had social security targeted to this kind of events. And you can see this chart. You can see countries with social security. With this, they reduced the costs. The longest bar is related to Uruguay, that has more social security. The effects in countries regarding how public policies that were ex ante developed help, and also reactivation, support by governments to Latin America. you can see how you see the participation of governments to grant support or grants to companies, people to recover production. Now, getting back to the international arena, the prospects for the year-end closing regarding international trade is a drop. We're not repeating. These are completely different data. This was when, as a cutoff of June. Now we're going to see, once we have data from June, July, August, we can analyze prospects, and this is once we are out of the confinement. We will see the dangerous part in a few seconds. How not having a vaccine can affect us again with a second wave. But these are data from June, July, August. So, and this is an incentive. Now, regarding the first semester, international trade, once we start consuming, going out, it's reactivated. The economy is recovered as such. This is an incentive. The behavior in accounting of 1 and 2 months regarding the second semester compared to the first semester, we do not have the storm anymore. The storm is still going on, but not in a serious manner. It is weaker, and we are preparing ourselves. Sorry for the reference, Mauricio. The attendees to this Congress are isolated, and this is something that we need to congratulate. Mis remedios, hello. Because we are led by all of them. I see Mauricio, and I say, this is not yet done. Distance, face mask, hand washing, all these actions will take us to say that the behavior of the second semester is improving. Estimates at the beginning, they were saying that we were going to have a GDP of minus 4.8. Look at these two hypotheses in the matter of businesses. We can see here how the positive hypothesis from minus 4.8, it's negative still, but no so big, 2.5, minus 2.5. The GDP for 2021 will have an increase of 4.9, and this is promising. But there's a disadvantage. We will see it later on, though. This recovery is also related to the news in Madrid, Paris, New York. It is interesting what we have in Madrid, but even more in Mexico. Yesterday, they announced that we can have the first person that is infected by the flu and COVID at the same time. So this is the risk, as Miguel from China said. We need to see this also. And that's why I'm saying that in Mexico, we don't have the second wave because we're still immersed in the first one. And of course, this can affect all these figures that we are presenting. What are the expectations then? This so wished vaccine is not yet here. And as Miguel pointed out, and it was also mentioned by Dr. O'Connell and Vega Cánovas, in the sense that, and we see this in laboratories, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and other laboratories, especially what they were talking about China. We need to review these speeches given by the President Xi Jinping. One, his participation in the General Assembly of the United Nations. He gave some figures on how Xi Jinping has helped some Latin American countries. China has supported 95 countries. And again, the conflict with the United States, they have not supported. Xi Jinping, president, in this speech announced that they will be supporting the WHO with a budget. And now the celebration of the United Nations had a speech where he mentioned Article 2 of San Francisco Letter in the United Nations, Article 2, that they will protect peace and international security. China is getting into sanitary safety and security. China will offer the vaccine as a common sanitary good. Sorry. So this is a part of vaccines. We would be expecting this for 2021 and start growing. We're optimistic if there's a vaccine. And I don't see how you see this, but there are some economies and societies, people, households that cannot stand this serious drop. This is really dangerous. There are countries in Asia, in Africa, Latin America, and Europe countries United States also has some issues in the sense of their condition. So the population and economy of the countries can resolve this attack. Mexico is one of the few countries that has not contracted debt. If the second wave is stronger and we start having a second infection wave, it is important to see how China is doing, however. So, in this negative hypothesis, and I am presenting this as such, Mexico has 6 million premises according to the economic census of last year. Out of these 6 millions, 2 millions starting from August are not getting back to the new reality. That's the size of the impact. So from March to April, there were 746,000 people that lost their Social Security registry. This is still changing from September to October. 183,000 job positions were created. However, this is not enough to improve household income. So this hypothesis can be very dangerous. How the situation in other aspects of the economy is doing regarding something that was not shown before. If we see this regarding international trade, imports and exports, we know that there has been a very important drop in exports, commodities. In North America, 24.5. Sorry, Europe, 24.5. North America, 21.8. This is imports. And in North America, 14.5, Europe, 19.3, and Asia, 7.1. In imports, exports, it was 6.1. And the implications are serious. I don't know how you see this, but companies stopped contracting new people, new services, and we need to consider that.
This is the graphic summary of the fall in terms of exports and imports of each region. So you can see the trend, and we are talking about the transition from the second quarter to the third quarter. In the economy, I don't know how you see this when it comes to services. And this is probably the relevant firm will comment on this. How do we see this drop in services? The world trade of services dropped 23%. This is the graph of the services impact. So we have also the impact of the foreign trade, but in services. So the conclusions, what do we have? The closing, we need to see the end of the year 2020. So to forecast the 2021, there's a slight change with respect to what we have. This is not catastrophic, but at least we have something better. The impact on manufacturing products in the different categories, minus 70% in April. This is in travel items and purses, electronic products had a drop, but it was not that intense. I don't know how you consider this. I had to buy like many gadgets, like communication gadgets, and this has an impact. So we had the same behavior in some products. For example, there's a relationship between the new products, and we need to see how we are going towards 5G, the new technologies, products vis-a-vis traditional products. I don't know how you see this in May and June, the second quarter, how these products have relevant behavior. There was a drop in consumption. Yes, the production was there, but the consumption was zero. It would be unthinkable that a company continues to produce while the sales dropped and the inventories are like full. So those are the new products. I don't know. But I had to buy a computer. I bought two portable discs. And what about this sector, the pharmaceutical sector? I bought naproxen, anti-diarrhea products, paracetamol. So it was just like to get prepared for the pandemic. Well, so far, this is a terror movie or horror movie, but as agents, we have a share, but economically on the social part, also we see an impact. But I hope that sanitary agents we need to be patient, but there has been a lot of sanitary agents that are working every day and are the ones that have been the most exposed. We have seen stories of nurses, doctors, or workers at hospitals that were infected, and unfortunately they died. So they need to be acknowledged because of the work they have been doing. So how do we get prepared? So how we're going to face the year 2021? Allow me to say this we were having a -10, -15, -20 economic behavior. If everything is okay, again, we will be talking about the conflict with the U.S., but it's not going to be a frontal battle when it comes to the health of people. Well, it affects in our income because of the foreign trade, but it does not affect. The important thing is not to have people infected, and that is why the vaccine is important. If everything is okay, that I give you the two hypotheses, like the negative and the positive one. So please notice our friends of South America. I don't know, how do you see this? How would the customer portfolio will be with respect to the growth, like in Malaysia, Korea, or the TPP friends? What does the recovery of Malaysia or Vietnam implies? So what does Japan, Australia, New Zealand, what's their view about this? And let alone South America. And this is where we see an important recovery in South America. So we need to analyze and how will be the behavior of the economies for this expectation. And let's see these two last slides or columns. No, the world trade with a drop of -9, and in 2021 is forecast to be 7.2 when we had growth rates of 3.54%. The most important rate was 6.5. If this growth will be seen in 2021, I hope that 2020 will finish today and tomorrow morning we will have this new expectation, but that's not the case. Well, here, let's see by regions. North America -14.7 for 2021, 10.7. Central and South America -7.7, and it's going to improve at 5.4 in 2021. Asia, a negative behavior on -4.5 with an expectation of 5.7. Europe -11.7 with a growth rate of 8.2. Imports. The last data were exports, now imports. North America -8.7, which is the U.S., and the USCM now implemented -8.7 vis-a-vis 6.7%. Central and South America -13.5 to 6.5. Europe -10.3 to 8.7 for next year. Asia -4.4 to 6.2. That is, in this table, we see how the economy I have to show you my new gadget. This is my contribution to the foreign trade of electronics. You see, this is what we sell, and this is what we buy, okay? Consumption, or X, and M for imports, X for exports. Okay, how do you see this column for 2021? This is the expectation for businesses. How we will see the purchases, the sales. Okay, I was as long provided we have the vaccine. But the orders also, in April, the manufacturing orders were 20.1 in April. And it dropped to 21.1 in a baseline of 50. And at the end of August, there's a recovery of 49.9. When we started to go out, the sales increased. Employment also was improved. We are not lowering the guard. The things look better. How do you think about this drop? Literally, if the growth is in L, if the growth is in a W shape, if the growth is a V, or the growth is in a prolonged V. So what is true, that we can see a V, and here we have the drop or the stagnation of investment, consumption, vis-a-vis exports, less imports. We have the behavior of the GDP as a result. And here there's something which is consumption, production, sales. Therefore, the revenue is evident. How's the behavior of the economy? So according to the slide. And it will be, Maurice is an excellent host. We would have been glad to host you, but well, all the trips that he organizes when we go to Mexico are wonderful. Remember the cultural tour he offered? But if we are not together in a meeting in Mexico City, but affects the aeronautic and civil aviation is affected. So the tourism industry, business, tourism, medical, tours, the cultural, there's a transportation, what is being implied here. In tourism, there are very many segments. Another drop is the accommodation industry, but in the Holy Week and Eastern week, everything was stopped. Also in July, June, where the kids are off school, which is a high season. And now in December, I don't know if Punta Cana, how they are preparing themselves to receive all tourism. The same thing in Uruguay and Argentina, because what is true that this is improving a little bit. This is the aeronautic industry, international flights, intracommunitary flights, but aeronautic industry also is improving. What we said a few minutes ago, this was this scenario from the 17th of January. I've already mentioned it. And this one was the scenario here. Okay, bear with me. I will answer the comments in the chat, but so I'm running out of time, I know. So here we have for the 17th of January, it was more than, well, we have to take into consideration the meeting in the Oval Office. What do we have? Once the adjustment was made in April, so the economy was telling us that something must be done. Dr. Connolly or the speaker De Miguel and Dr. Eva Calvert, we are in another scenario, which is the geopolitics at stake. And I will go over the conclusions. I do not want to reiterate what I've just said. I just want to highlight what Dr. Connolly and Dr. Carnevas said. Okay, we were like this 75 years ago. At the end of the Second World War, we had this scenario. So how, okay, this is with China developed as of 1978. Then we have another important stage, 2001, with the admission of China in the WTO. This is a huge expense or investment in science and development. And the result, that after 70 years, it is important to highlight the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Republic. And today, we have this scenario. This is our reality now. 75 years ago, we had that China it was a barely emerging country. China in exports in 1949 participated with 0.9% of the total of the world. And with this important development of China, today China participates in terms of exports with 11.8%, while the U.S. has a share of 8.2%. And this is, I don't want to be repetitive, but this is where the conflict rises between the UA and China. I think that is not strictly on technology, it's not Huawei. I urge you to analyze. There's a very important figure in international politics, the so-called triad created in the 70s, how Japan with the European Economic Community and the U.S. facing the countries under socialism, communism, and they presented the triad on the technology side. Okay, I'm using this figure to tell you, and it is very important to take into account this date, is an event that went unknown, but we need to take it into account. On the 14th of September of last year in Washington, there was the first triad of the 5G, 14th of September of last year. What did this imply? It is not like by coincidence that Apple will be tomorrow and launching the first product with 5G technology. This is not fortuitous, and we need to analyze the people that participate. Allow me to use this concept. Is because this was like the first conclave 5G of the main producers, the main operators regarding this new technology. So what is at stake in this system? So we went from a system, no. I'm sorry. The commercial security and pass and security. So under this superstructure, what is at stake? Internet of Things. We do have, I'm sorry, but there's audio problems. We have the reality adopted, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, M2M connections, like between machines. We have the 3D printing, and something that has not been said. We need to know that the first 3D construction, literally, we saw it in 10 days. When the Chinese government, and we do not have all like the accurate information, the Chinese government built under 3D 2 hospitals. And we saw it. I don't know if you follow the broadcast, but it was the first construction in 3D live. Sorry, And this is the predominance of the new scientific technological revolution called 4.0. And this is what is at stake. For China to be able, as Dr. Canovas said, don't confront and you will overcome the situation. So China, not to be confronted with the U.S., withdrew from the WTO, the market figure. This is on China's side. And this withdrawal is so important that opens China in that 2 weeks ago, what was initiated by on the 3rd of April of 2017 about the tariffs imposition on June 2018 and 2019 with the tariffs after an investigation, the WTO, because this is very dangerous for the U.S., the WTO 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, WTO made the investigation public and said what the U.S. imposed to China in tariff is not right. It is a unilateral practice. So China now, the U.S. will eliminate the tariffs, and this is the dangerous thing. This is what Dr. Vega Cánovas is saying. If China did not confront the maximum agency of multilateral commerce, prove right to China. So U.S. has to take away the tariffs on China. If it doesn't want to do so, China will have the freedom of establishing tariffs to the products that the Chinese products when it comes to the U.S., though they use the verdict of the WTO to make even more weaker the multilateralism. On the side of on the security part, we see how Trump has been against the OPEP. Also, Trump has attacked. So it was questioning what the WTO established its position with China. There's an analysis.
We carried out this analysis at the UNAM University, at the Business and Economy Center. And something really important to point out is that in 2015, the Chinese currency is part of the currency basket of the international system, having special rights as all the others. And here we have the Chinese coin. And as Dr. Connolly and Sanchez Canova mentioned, of the new bank model. their international presence. In this aspect, we need to analyze how this multilateralism is versus regionalism. And here is where we're going to have the conflict between China and the United States. With or without Biden, with or without Trump, we're going to have this conflict, this multilateral system. And with this, I'm going to finish. And then you let me know if I get into conclusions. We need to recall what happened in Italy between 1933 and 1939. We already saw that film and we suffered it. This incipient nationalism regarding to what we saw in Germany and Italy in 1933, the crisis of 1929, strong nationalism. And we need also to consider that Merkel in December, well, she announced that a year ago, but it is not the leader of the party. We saw the huge conflict of the political party in Germany with the defense minister. Merkel leaves the power. She's not in for next election. There is a strong nationalism in Netherlands, Austria, France. So the world is profiling to a strong nationalism and protectionism. We already saw that movie. This is the result of a huge crisis, making a parallelism. Hopefully it won't happen. Otherwise, we're going to see big issues with all this army development. But the crisis of 1929, we need to analyze economies in 1932, what the economies were in Germany, that nationalism and protectionism, which are launched by the Führer back then. And there's a competition for territories. Those islands in Japan with China, a conflict between countries. Let's not forget Korea. So we are sitting on a bomb and smoking. And at any point, we will have an explosion. Shall I get into final conclusions? Yes, please. So, I'm going to underline. Mauricio doesn't have the gift of Cassandra of foreseeing the future. And if so, let me know which is the lottery ticket that's going to win. Because Mauricio has a good foreseen gift. A year ago, we sat together to talk about this, and he made a good scheme of it. You know that every 4 years on November the 3rd, it's very important, and more with the recent situation of the United States. during these 3 or 4 years that have just passed. So what do we have here? I'm going to skip this part that was already mentioned. We will see that part. This is going to be relevant regarding this part. I think that this finished here. And I shared this note with you, Mauricio. We can see a Biden here. Pro-Latin America, Harris, fighting for gender equality, pro-migrant or migrant. It is important to realize that Obama, that he's praised this Obama and Biden, those immigrants, we can see the expulsion of immigrants. Biden, we need to see how being senator and VP adopts and fosters nationalist policies in the United States. That's in the past. But now, as a candidate, we can recall the last Democrat convention in August. Please review this. Biden had a speech in July. His speech sees the stand and makes Trump as the advocate of free commerce. That's the size of the figure in trade terms. Senator Harris voted against the free trade agreement. So between Biden and Harris, we have a completely protectionist profile in the context that we have just mentioned. We need to analyze then thoroughly Biden speech and see what's going to set forth Biden, what he's fostering, because he's pushing for a nationalism, economic nationalism, sorry, he's cutting. So he fosters an economic patriotic movement. So those are the positions of both candidates. So the economy in the United States could be growing with a strong nationalism fostered by Trump, or B, economic partidism fostered by Biden, but both look for to foster the internal U.S. market. And please read The Federalist of Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton published it in 1990. That book is very important. Let us know. It's somewhere here. The Federalist. My apologies. I want to look for it. This book, The Federalist. Is a big work of the trade policy of the United States. The Federalist in the trade policy of this president, of Biden candidate, seems to be something new, but no. The trade policy is based on this book of 1890. Alexander Hamilton gathers the thoughts of founder fathers. And that's what Biden and Trump have as the basis for the world economy. And we need to see the reading of the dollar bill regarding the people. Biden speech and Trump refer to the Article 1, Paragraph 8 of the U.S. Constitution. That's where we find the basis of the internal market policy. So we need to read this article, Article 1. So this refers to the defense of the territory. That's why the political defense how's possible that Biden supports the enterprise? And with this I am done. I beg you, Mauricio, I was trying to look for a friend. Tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. in Washington East time, we have the prospects of world economy. The document which is going to be presented tomorrow has all the scenarios. And also, we have a pessimistic hypothesis. And once again, we're getting back to this drop movement. Those are the prospects, and that's the importance of this document. And I'm sorry that I couldn't bring him. This is really important. And we have to recall Mauricio's leadership and to analyze this. And with this, I'm done. again. I have to mention this date because of the Bretton Woods meeting in Washington and U.S. elections. Thank you very much for your attention and participation. And congratulations to our leader, Mauricio, for this meeting. Thank you, Ignacio. We're going to hand out your participation diploma. Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. My apologies for hurrying you up. Now, Nayeli Cruz Mora will hand out this participation diploma to Dr. Ignacio Martinez, please. Nayeli? Thank you very much. Go ahead, please. Dr. Ignacio, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. On behalf of UC&CS America, I hand out to you this participation diploma for your valuable participation as a speaker. It's the Metamorfosis, GeoPollitics, GeoEconomy before an emerging world order. Sorry, I cannot read very well. Okay. We thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.